Who is DiMaggio, and how did he just disappear?
Every minute is critical in the search for these two missing children.
What we've now learned of the search for Hannah Anderson, her little brother Ethan, and the man who allegedly took them, next on Raising America.
I believe the hardest thing emotionally is still to come when I have to go and start cleaning out their apartments and rooms. But I have a lot of support here with me, and we'll try to get through it.
God bless him. Doesn't that just, I mean, it just takes your breath away that the father of Hannah and Ethan Anderson speaking out there. We're going to hear more from him in a moment, I want to let you know. But that Amber Alert has been widened now for James Lee DiMaggio, Hannah, and Ethan. The search area now includes California, Oregon, and Washington after possible sightings, specifically in Alturas, California, and Lakeview, Oregon. Police have received hundreds of tips but have not been able to track down DiMaggio just yet. Before I bring in my panel, I want to check in with Lieutenant Glenn Gianantonio from the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. Lieutenant, first of all, thank you so much for being with us. Any new leads you can tell us about?
Well, we've been receiving tips from literally across the country, for the past at least 3 or 4 days. Yesterday, there were a cluster of tips that came in, some sounding very credible, from Northern California, Oregon, and Washington State. The Amber Alert was opened or widened to include Oregon and Washington State. The law enforcement authorities in the Northern California, Oregon, and Washington area have been following up on those tips. As it stands now, there are no actual confirmed sightings where we can say for certain that it was them, but we're still following up with the tips, and we're asking the public to keep their eyes open and report anything they see.
Do you still believe him to be traveling in that blue Nissan Versa?
Well, we're not sure. That was the vehicle he was last seen driving back on, I would believe it'd be Sunday. We're not sure if he's ditched that vehicle, he's in another vehicle, or taking public transportation. At this point, we don't know if he's even, moving around. He could be hunkered down somewhere waiting for the heat to die or to blow over and then come out of hiding then.
Do you have any idea when you're going to get results about that child's body that was found? Because I'm assuming once you do that, and once we know whether Ethan may or may not be with them, that could certainly help narrow things for you, couldn't it?
Exactly, it would. We would love to be able to do it sooner, but the body was very badly burned, and obtaining a DNA sample from the remains has been proving very difficult. We have a couple different avenues we're trying to obtain the DNA from at this point. We're hoping we'll be able to get a DNA match within the next couple days, maybe several days, depending on if we need to use a different lab. And there is a real possibility that we will never be able to identify the remains because of the degree to which it was burned.
Well, Lieutenant, let me just ask you this one last question. Is there anything else specific that you can give us as the public that will help us help you?
It's tough to say. Right now, we really have no idea where they are. We're not focusing on any one area more than any other area. They could be literally anywhere in the country or even Mexico, Canada. There has been several days now, and they can get pretty far in that amount of time. Mm-hmm. We really don't know. We don't know if they've changed their appearances. We don't know if they're driving the vehicle or, the Nissan Versa or any other vehicle. So we're just asking the public if they see anything that they think might match the people, whether it's DiMaggio and Hannah or with or without Ethan with them. We don't want people to see a couple, say DiMaggio and Hannah, and then not call it in because, well, there's not an 8-year-old boy with them.
Right.
So we're just not sure. We can't say for certain whether that was. However, we can say the size of the remains is consistent with that of an 8-year-old, and we aren't missing any other children in the area.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, though, we can't say that we believe that is Ethan until we have a positive ID.
Okay. Well, Lieutenant Glenn Gianantonio from the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, we appreciate so much your guidance for us today. Thank you for being with us.
And thank you guys for keeping this out there.
Always. Thank you. We are, I hate to say happy to do it, because there's nothing happy about this, but I think it's our responsibility to some point as well, because of the amount of violence that's associated with. You think, what amount of violence might he resort to if he feels like he's being caught or threatened. So obviously with me, HLN law enforcement analyst Mike Brooks, attorney John Phillips, Lynn Barry, psychologist Judy Ho is in LA, and I want to start with our Paul Verkaman. He's live in San Diego as well. And Paul, I understand that you've dug up more on DiMaggio's relationship with the Andersons specifically?
Well, a lot of family friends have talked about this relationship, Christy, and they said that basically Mr. DiMaggio knew the children since childbirth, and that Jim Anderson and Mr. DiMaggio, I should say Brett Anderson and Mr. DiMaggio, were so close that the kids actually called him uncle. Now, earlier today, Mr. Anderson was on CNN, and he was pressed about whether or not there was some sort of relationship between DiMaggio and his 16-year-old daughter. And here's what he had to say.
I have not heard anything about that. If I had heard something about that, or my wife had heard something about that, it would have been cut off.
And there was such a level of trust here. One person telling us at one point that DiMaggio lived with Brett Anderson's mother and, in fact, had saved up some money while living with her, enough money to go ahead and buy that house out there in Boulevard, California, Christy.
I understand, too, that you've learned about some sort of misdemeanor arrest of his in Texas. Is that right?
Yeah, there's sort of an interesting parallel here. I mean, not starkly and alarming, but DiMaggio, when he was a 22-year-old, 18 years ago, was arrested for fleeing from an officer. And in obtaining the arrest report, it seemed that DiMaggio was following some car that had gone the wrong way. And at one point, he heads down a country road going 60 or 70 miles per hour. This, of course, was a misdemeanor, but ironic or maybe fitting that the arrest for fleeing from a police officer. And, of course, right now, he is AWOL, Christy.
All righty. Well, gosh, thank you so much, Paul, for giving us the latest. We appreciate it. We watched this and we think, who is this guy? Who is James Lee DiMaggio? A suspected murderer and suspected kidnapper, an IT specialist, a divorcee, and an avid gamer. We're piecing together his profile here to see if that could help find him. Then, does your child know what to do if a predator does come after them?
When he grabs you, you're looking to turn to run, okay? As you run, I want you to go in between the bench. In between the bench, now go in between the trash can. Run, run, run.
The 5 steps that they can learn right now to give them a fighting chance. Plus, Usher says his son is doing well after nearly drowning, but the star's ex-wife says this is all Usher's fault. Get ready for a custody showdown. And full coverage of the Joshua Young trial coming up in less than an hour now. Can his lawyers convince a jury that little Josh did not help his dad murder his stepson? The multiple faces of Jim DiMaggio. Get this into your brain, people. 40 years old, 5 foot 9 inches tall, 150 pounds, brown hair and brown eyes. Described as a loner, non-materialistic, more interested in video games than anything else. Well, now you can also add wanted for kidnapping and murder. DiMaggio was a tech-savvy guy. This much we know. He'd recently been laid off. His finances were in pretty bad shape, apparently, and he was about to lose his home. Now, because of that, those who knew him say he had slipped into a depression. And his Facebook page seems to kind of back that up a little bit. I mean, this was one of the last posts, a quote from W.M. Lewis that says, "The tragedy of life is not that it ends so soon, but that we wait so long to begin it." I want to bring Judy into the conversation here. I'm looking at this thinking, okay, could the loss of his job and the potential loss of his home cause him to suddenly become this violent person that nobody knew before?
Well, Christy, I think there was something underlying to begin with, and oftentimes it takes a big stressor for that to really come out in an individual. But he was described as a loner. You know, he was addicted to video games, and especially this video game EverQuest, which is a way to take on a different identity and feel powerful. And maybe he didn't feel that way in his own life, and, you know, this video game was a way of channeling that. And it's a way of escaping from his life, which was deteriorating more and more after time. And so I really think that all of these stressors together was a huge break for him.
Well, and if this was a downward spiral, it could have really hit rock bottom. As we learned some of these details, that we're sort of progressing day by day, getting more nuggets. Apparently, friends say that friends of Hannah say he became obsessed with this teenage girl. Take a listen.
There was nothing ever to show any indication of this. Everybody you could even talk to loved him. He would give you the shirt off his back, and he was there to help at any time you called, and nothing ever like this indicated anything. I can't fathom what happened in Jim's head. What happened? He obviously just lost it.
I've just recently learned about a confession that Hannah's made to my girls, and I honestly believe that Jim has snapped and couldn't handle the infatuation that he had with Hannah.
Okay, so what can we learn about this? Because this is really what raising is all about. What are the lessons that people can take home for their own families? That mother there was talking about her daughter giving her some information that Jim was obsessed with Hannah. Here's the detail that's important. She didn't learn this until after. And here's what everyone should think about. Parents need to talk to their kids.
But
they
it's not just
need
that.
to understand the relationships that they're having and whether or not any of them raise red flags.
But kids need to talk to their parents. And how do we let me ask you that, Judy, how do we get teenagers to recognize, okay, this is a secret that I have to keep to myself, but this is a secret that I need to tell somebody about? How do we drill that into them?
You know, I think the communication between parents and children have to start very early, and parents have to model that it's okay to talk about all types of information, and they need to sort of get that message to them when they're at a very young age, before some of this provocative stuff can come up when they become preteens and teenagers. And I think sometimes, you know, there are parents who, they don't want to believe something negative is happening, and so they push away the negative content. No, that's not really happening. Don't say that. This is somebody we trust. And, you know, actually people like this, you know, people who kidnap, people who murder, they're always surprising, you know, to their neighbors and friends. Everybody seems to think that they're nice, and there's a way that they have about them to sort of pull these people in, right? They have to get that trust to get close enough. And so I think parents have to start educating their children at a very young age that, you know, here are the steps that you need to take if anything is concerning. And if you don't want to come to us, here are some other people that you can go to, like your teachers, maybe a counselor, and just give them some options, right? Even hotlines, so that if they don't feel comfortable going to their parents, there are these other options, because sometimes kids just don't feel that level of comfortability with their own parents.
What about the fact, Mike, that as they look for him, they may be changing the appearance? I mean, that's pretty common.
Oh,
right?
absolutely, yeah. No, I wouldn't be surprised, you know, and that's why I'm glad we're showing these different pictures, you know, him with a beard, him without a beard. Think about her with shorter hair, with darker hair, that kind of thing. You know, if you see an adult with someone who looks like a teenager, if you, just like the lieutenant from San Diego Sheriff said, if you think you see something, say something. Let somebody know about it. Even if you're wrong, let somebody know, because that's how we're going to catch this guy.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. I mean, we think we know somebody. What behavior, Mike, because you've done so many investigations, what behavior should alert us that suddenly there might be a dangerous side to this person that I haven't seen before?
Well, what we were reading in social media, on Facebook, what kind of things has he been tweeting? What kind of things has he been texting to Hannah? You know, and Hannah, again, now we're hearing, and it's always after the fact, John. It's always after the fact do we hear, oh, yeah, well, she told us this. The doctor's right, Judy's right. You have to have a dialogue with your kids and let them know. We just did the predator test. You know, you start when they're kids. Hey, if something happens to you, let us know.
And if it's consistent, hopefully they'll habituate that, right? They'll habituate that. DiMaggio's ex-wife, have you heard about this? Calls the suspect nerdy, but says he was great with her son. So she talked about why that marriage fell apart.
He was great until we got married. After we got married, then he no longer did anything with my son and myself. He would just stay up all night on those video games.
Specifically, a video game called EverQuest. We'll dig deeper into that for you. Loved to play an online video game called EverQuest, and it may have helped wreck his marriage, apparently. Listen to what his ex-wife told Nancy Grace.
He was great until we got married. After we got married, then he no longer did anything with my son and myself. He would just stay up all night on those video games.
Wait. I got to hear about this. It's just hard for me to take in a man. He's married to a lovely woman that's got a 5-year-old son, your son, and he stays up all night with a virtual video game? What's he doing?
Just playing his video games.
What game was it?
It was EverQuest.
What?
It was called EverQuest, and it was like a Viking, and then he could play with other people. He'd play with other people at work, and...
All right, John Phillips, I know you've done a lot of research on this stuff. What do you think?
You know, I've done some of the violence, and 40 million people a month play Call of Duty, and you just get into the psychology of it. And a game like this allowed him to be somebody different than what he was. And when you have somebody kind of experimenting into their own reality who already has some delusion,
yeah.
It
okay, but
fosters
wait a second.
the fantasy
You
land.
just said it. 40 million people play this game. How many of them are going out, burning up a house, killing people, and then running off with a 16-year-old girl? I think it's important to talk about here. This comes down to a problem before you start playing a video game. There has to be a mental illness here, and that they find some sort of social environment that they can't get elsewhere. They get it online, and it leads to something much bigger.
I agree, but when the wife is knowing that he's playing these games all night, every night, and not saying, hey, why don't you interact with your family?
Yeah. Okay, hold on.
It's destroying relationships.
This is your wheelhouse. We have 15 seconds.
Well, you know, this is a problem that pre-existed in Jim. I mean, there's only a few people who are video game addicts, and they're really trying to run away from their own reality, and this world allows them to do that.
Right. Thank you so much. Back in a moment. That Amber Alert is still an urgent call for Hannah and Ethan Anderson this hour. The search area includes California, Oregon, and Washington after reported sightings in those states. Really kind of expanded the search. Specifically, tips came from Alturas, California, Lakeview. We know police have received hundreds of calls, and a law enforcement source says police are still anxiously awaiting DNA tests, which should tell them if the remains found at the crime scene are those of 8-year-old Ethan. So investigators have, been hunting down James DiMaggio for days, and don't you think it's hard to believe with so many eyes, so many cameras searching for him, that there doesn't seem to be this trace at all of one of who has become America's most wanted men.
So here's what we want to know. How is James DiMaggio going unseen? I mean, we live in an era where from streets to office buildings, you can't move without being caught on tape. To prove our point, we came here to HLN headquarters. Within minutes, I am captured on multiple cameras. So the question remains, how did this guy vanish without a trace? When Big Brother's watching in every major city, cameras are out there to capture your every move.
So you saw there, I mean, there are cameras everywhere, which makes you think unless James DiMaggio planned this abduction, how the heck is he avoiding the radar? I mean, the first thing I thought of is they got to eat.
But somebody's got to be monitoring those cameras and report, which is usually the unusual circumstance. Somebody's not sitting there saying, oh, is that James? Is that James? It's not the way it works.
That was my question to Mike. Mike, there are 30 million cameras out there. How in the world do you even begin to start looking at tape? Where do you even begin?
Well, I know here in Atlanta, they have put out a lot of cameras. You see little blue lights. Yes, they record and are on a loop for a certain period of time. But a lot of times, the traffic cameras that are run by, California Caltran, a lot of them don't record. They're just there to look for accidents. But one of the questions I was going to ask the lieutenant, number one, did he take out a large amount of money? Because
ATM cameras.
ATM cameras, You know, they got to stop to eat somewhere? Have they gone? I'm sure that these are things they've done, but these are things I want to ask Lieutenant about.
Releasing.
But they might not be releasing. But you know.
But you know, there was that tip that led them to believe that he'd be heading north up in the Washington area.
Yeah.
Would they say, okay, we can pinpoint it to this highway, so let's check those cameras to see if we see the vehicle?
Right. They thought that they had one car that apparently, you know, they had the tag readers that apparently had captured the tag number, but they weren't able to find the vehicle. You know, so that could happen quickly. Right. So that might have given them a general direction of maybe where they are going or where they're headed.
But Judy, with everything that we've learned about him, do you see anything in his profile that would tell you this was premeditated, that this guy thought about this and knows how to stay off the grid?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, I want to bring back that video game addiction to EverQuest that he had. You know, this is a strategy game. It takes a lot of patience to succeed in this game. You know, you have to really plan out your next steps. It's really about longevity in this game. Your character can get killed and you won't be able to bring that character back. And so I think he's had tons of practice in this video game arena about how to plan out, how to attack. I mean, that's part of the game too. And so I think that he's really using this. He's probably thought about this for months. And there's this kind of calm, cool, and collected, creepy thing about his personality profile that's really kind of seeping in here.
Okay, so real quickly, getting back to the video game thing, is there a chance that people who play it as intensely as he apparently did, that there becomes a blurred line between that and reality?
Absolutely. They use it oftentimes as a way to get things they're not getting in their real lives. And so if he's not getting the kind of social connection he wants in his real life, he might be getting it through this game. The number of hours that's been reported that, you know, by his ex-wife that he was playing this game, it's, you know, that kind of shows how involved he was. And so after a while, you know, when you feel so powerful in this video game fictional world, you start to blur the lines between that and reality, and you start to try to bring in some of those aspects into your real life. And so I think that it's really confusing for him at this point, you know, and he doesn't see that in real life there are consequences to doing this type of thing, whereas in the video game arena, really, there's not a consequence. I mean, the video game is the consequence.
There's a lieutenant colonel that advises on Call of Duty that says that the 8-year-olds playing Call of Duty now are more tactically trained than soldiers in the 80s. And so now you're dealing with fantasy stuff. You know, this is fantasy life, and if you have a delusional person, they adapt it and they're trained, and it could feed right into it.
But, you know, at the end of the day, if it's taking so long to track this guy down, you think, all right, maybe he really is just off the beaten path. I mean, we know he's a camping enthusiast, right? So we're getting wilderness expert and professional tracker Tom Brown on the phone. He's trying to predict the dangerous next move of this man. And then a judge could decide. This is what everybody wants to know. What has Jim DiMaggio done with 16-year-old Hannah and 8-year-old Ethan Anderson? If he has them, again, this is allegedly, but these are their faces. And we've learned from their father, Brett Anderson, Jim was an avid camper. Brett made this public plea earlier this morning.
He's into camping. He could be anywhere. That's why people that are going out to different camp spots, please keep your eyes open. I don't care where it is.
So if he is now off the grid, what can investigators do to find him? I want to talk to Tom Brown. He's a wilderness survival expert. He wrote a book about the subject, and he's the founder of the Tracker School. So, Tom, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. We know that he lived in a secluded area. In your opinion, what are the chances that he's nearby?
You know, what's going to happen is he's going to probably go to an area that he's already planned out. If this isn't a spur-of-the-moment occurrence, he's probably planned this for some time. So what the officers are probably going to have to do is find out what he's been doing, where he's been going, what he might have with him, what he's accumulated, plus his favorite areas that he likes to go into the bush, you know, and also to go through actually the burned house, not to find out what's there and burned, but what's not there, because it means that he's probably taken something with him in that house, and somebody's got to know what's in that house. For instance, if he has firearms and they're not in the burn scene, that means they're with him. If he's got a tent, sleeping bag, shovels, you know, that kind of thing, these are all indicators of where he's going to go. But especially to interview the people that are close to him, to find out where his favorite haunts are, where he's been researching, or where he's been going. These are all indicators of what this man is going to probably do.
Yeah, some of the pictures that we were just showing from Facebook were pictures that he had taken of areas, obviously, that he was fond of. So let me ask you this. Would a lack of supplies be what drives him out, Tom?
I didn't hear that question.
Would a lack of supplies drive him out of wherever he may be hiding?
Most of these guys that think they're survivalists or anything, but they need their supplies. They need their lifeline. If he hasn't got food, water put up, then it's probably going to
That's
drop.
the question here. How long can he last, do you think? Because you would assume he only had a car full of supplies. So how long would something like that last him?
This way, that you got to look at the order of survival. The first thing you concern yourself with is shelter, followed by water, and fire, then food. There's probably nobody that can't really go 2 weeks without eating. Water becomes an issue, especially in a desert area.
And Tom's right about something. He may have planned this out and stockpiled and put things in a certain area. And that's why it's very important for investigators to go back. Had he been ordering a lot of supplies online? Follow that paper trail, because that's going to tell them exactly how far he could get. What kind of, does he have money? Did he take a large amount of money out? Does he have a cell phone? Did he shut it off, take the battery out so it wouldn't ping? These are all things I think law enforcement knows right now, but they're not really saying.
Well, Tom, let me ask you this. Does it take, really special skills? I mean, is there a particular group of authorities who are specialized to go into these areas that others are not, to look for something specific?
Oh, yeah, there are people that are well-trained in this, certainly, but you can literally train yourself within the span of a week to 10 days to pretty much go into a wilderness area and survive with nothing if you pay attention to what is being taught.
Tom makes a good point there. Yeah, go ahead, Tom. Sorry. Well, but Tom's making a good point there about paying attention, because they bring up this point about the campgrounds, right, Tom? Because if people are out there on summer vacation and they're out there camping, this is an area that they should be looking, not just on the roads and at the train stops.
Right.
Figure any area outside of camp areas. These are things that, especially with a camper, this is going to be an easy scenario to spot for any kind of helicopter or plane surveillance. So he's got to be good at camouflaging wherever he's living.
All righty, Tom.
Abandoned cabin.
Tom, so grateful to have your insight today. Thank you for letting us know. Tom Brown, wilderness survival expert and founder of the Tracker School there. A suspected predator posing as a friend of the family. It's just a nightmare. But it really raises a critical question. Would your child know what to do if someone tried to take them? We've got tactics that you can teach them right now. But first, a custody fight for Usher. He heads to court tomorrow trying to keep his boys after his son almost drowned.